I want to talk about, you mentioned the 70s when you really got into politics. Of course, we saw the elimination of the gold standard at the time. There's much talk. I've had Michael Saylor on the show to talk about this idea of the Bitcoin standard. And we saw obviously some volatility this week with inflation, the US dollar losing its value, and people moving into gold, into precious metals. Gold has popped up a little bit over the past few days. And of course, many billionaires, millionaires see Bitcoin right now as the ultimate store of value. In fact, we even heard Fed Chief Jerome Powell say that he thinks it rivals gold as a store of value. Where do you come down on cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, though, as property and as a store of value for the future of our monetary policy in the United States?
Well, I don't go out of my way to make predictions, but I have made some, on bubbles and when that they will burst and this sort of thing. But I would say that I personally expect gold to be around a lot longer than cryptocurrencies. I just don't think I don't think they're money. But I have a very strong. I talk at the cryptocurrency meetings a lot, and most of them have the worldview that I have. The world is messed up. The economy is messed up. We have too many wars, and we have too big a government. The deficits are wrong, and there's going to be chaos, and we ought to protect ourselves. And that's what I believe. I think it's a mess, and I believe that cryptocurrencies ought to be legal, and there should be no prohibitions against using cryptocurrencies, and let the market sort it out. I don't think the market has sorted this out. Right now there's a lot of questions raised. Crypto was up to 64,000, now it's down to 58,000. So that's not a big deal. I would think if I bought it 58,000 or bought it at 60,000, I'd be wondering what's going on. But it just historically does not qualify as money. But if it does protect people, as long as the people that are involved, and this is a big if really, as long as the people involved do not commit fraud, they can do what they want with it. But that's our biggest problem with our fiat money. It's fraudulent,
Right.
So,
Yeah, I hear that argument I hear that argument all the time. It's like, well, what is the US dollar, or what is Bitcoin even based on? And I often say to people on my show, I say, well, what is the dollar based on? What does it stand for anymore if we can just print it? When you have when you have Bitcoin, when you can actually, finite how many Bitcoin are in production and what we have, wouldn't the US government be better off moving to a blockchain so we know precisely how much currency is in circulation?
I want you to have the freedom to do that, but that gets a little confusing for me because, I was drafted in the 60s. Vietnam was going on. And I thought about the people as they were struggling to get out of Vietnam. And I read stories where the people who got out usually had a gold coin in their pocket. And I keep thinking, well, I don't know all this I should know about cryptocurrencies, and I'm not really good with a computer. So I thought, am I going to carry the computer? What happens if the electricity goes off? How am I going to do all this? But I want the freedom to do this. And there's a big difference between Mises. Talks about the origination of money, all sound money, and money that works. It originates in the marketplace. People want to see something. If it's a pack of cigarettes or something, or tobacco or whatever, there's always a substitute that they can see. And our dollar, although it is now, it originated as silver. That was the silver standard, and gold, of course. There, the Constitution says only gold and silver can be legal tender. I argue that the Libertarian Society can solve this problem and make the decision, and I don't think anybody knows exactly where the cryptos are going. To think that I'm going to sell my house and buy crypto because it's going to $1 million. It may, because it's a lot higher than I thought it was, a couple months ago. But what I'm involved in is arguing the case for liberty, solving the problem, and that only works if you have a moral society. And our founders understood this. They gave us the Constitution, but they said it won't be worth anything if you don't have a moral standard, and that people have to, live under those conditions. And that's the biggest job. And right now, we are less moral than the country was at one time. And it's less family oriented. And there's too much corruption in government. And as a matter of fact, you might say governments are corrupt by nature. So this is what I think is important. People say, well, what are you going to do for your survival? Well, I'm going to do exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm going to have as much safety and security and investments as I can. But nothing is safe, and that's why I put most of my energy into talking about why you need to work for freedom and curtail your government. That's where the real threat is. It isn't coming from the fact that somebody's going to invade us or the coronavirus. It's the fact that the government is undermined. Coronavirus, I don't happen to believe it was anything compared to what they made it out to believe. And yet look at what they've done to us by scaring everybody to death and butchering our kids. It makes me sick to watch these kids in grade school, 8, 9, 10 years old, all wearing masks, which I think are very, very dangerous to do. So that we don't want that type of government. That's why I want people to say, well, how do you solve these problems, and try to explain the best I can how that can work out. You should be able to understand property rights. The understanding of property rights were fully understood more than 300 years before the Ten Commandments were written. They knew that private property was a significant event, and that's what we need to deal with. But now, especially in this age of this wokeism and all this stuff going on, property is supposed to be owned by the people, not the individual. They're going to be owned by the government, and you will have elite people telling us what to do, and they'll tell us where we can go, and that's why they want those passports jammed into our bodies.
Well, and that's why I think Bitcoin specifically, I'm not talking about Ethereum, these other cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin as property. We see what happened in Venezuela. We're seeing what's happening in other countries right now in Central America and South America, where they are moving towards Bitcoin to get away from their country's currency as a way to protect themselves, to get out of poverty, to actually have something to as you mentioned, having a coin in your pocket to get out of Vietnam. And I think, having that particular digital wallet tied directly to that person, as Michael Saylor says, you can stab me, you can shoot me, you'll never be able to access it. It's mine. It's tied to me. And I think that's incredibly powerful and uplifting, and it gives people the freedom, I think, of that movement that you're talking about. And so where do you see gold? I mean, we talk. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. And that's why what I want, they're legal. And you just described why. Well, they'll never be able to curtail the transmission of the Bitcoin. That's where my experience with just looking at history and looking at Congress and looking at Washington and looking at gold. Look at what they did in 1933. The first thing they did was turn in your gold. You said, well, you can't turn in crypto. I'll tell you, I think the government is so powerful. And I read the stories, even though I don't understand how they figure it out. But I've read stories where people and talked to people who, at the exchanges, they found out that they made some profits, and they were called to tax by the IRS. Some of the conferences I went to, they say, "Oh yes, we should be regulated by the SEC. That'll give us, it'll make us look credible and authentic." I said, well, you can do that. Yeah, you're lobbying for that? I don't lobby for that kind of stuff, because the government is the problem, whether it's a gold standard or a paper standard. And your argument would be a very valuable argument. And that's why I would argue that I'm in favor of exactly what you want. And that is that you can use crypto and make whatever you can, keep it from the government being able to come in and it's just that I have a ways to go before all of a sudden I am going to become confident that my government is going to take care of me and protect my liberty. The clowns I worked with in Washington, they're not going to take care of you or me. They're going
No
to
way.
support they're going to support the people who want power. It's ideological battle that we're fighting right now is where all the action should be, because if you don't change those attitudes, crypto won't save us, gold won't save us. It just won't work. And this government we have won't save us either. And we don't have the worst government, but we used to have one of the best. But right now, it's the world that's suffering, from the willingness of the people to go along with authoritarianism as our managers of our lives.